Hello and welcome to MLW Con-Fusion. I'm your host Rob Cameron, bringing you all that you may or may not need to know about Major League Wrestling and its television programming. This week, no MLW, of course, so gonna switch things over. Got to sit down in the studio with Marek Brave, the head trainer of the Black and Brave Wrestling Academy and the promoter for SCW Pro out of Davenport, Iowa. They got two big anniversaries coming up: 10 years for the Black and the Brave and 21 years for SCW Pro. They will be having their anniversary show this Saturday, 9/7 at Bluegrass, Illinois, at the Bluegrass Community Center, 6 p.m. start time. So if you are in the area, please go check that out. But first, we have the news. There's a new report coming down the telegraph lines that MLW has re-signed Akira to a 2-year contract. He has been pegged as the future of the promotion by Raven at War Games. He has been with the company for pretty near 2 years at this point, and is signed for another 2 years. So I think this is a solid investment for MLW, and I'm kind of excited to see where, with Akira locked down, to see where he's going to go from here. Especially, again, we got that big pat on the back from Raven, and he's already a former middleweight and tag team champion as well. So kudos to Akira. Glad to hear them retaining some of their top level talent. Also coming down the pipeline is matches out of Fightland. That is going to be Saturday, September 14th at Center Stage in Atlanta. We are looking at the debut of former IWGP Junior Heavyweight Tag Team Champion Jason Knight. The Jet himself is coming to MLW. He will be battling Bobby Fish of the Faux Horsemen. I don't know. Whatever you want to call the new group. With himself, BRG, and the Andersons. Either way, Knight is going to have his hands full with that one, whether it's Fish by himself or if he's got to contend with all 4 members of that faction. It has also been announced that Kenta will take on TJP in Opera Cup action. And then by proxy, Bad Dude Tito will be battling Mystico in a champion versus champion battle. So that should be interesting. Both these matches are part of the Opera Cup semifinals. Again, this is part of Fightland, and it's their tapings. That was some odd grammar I was going with, and so I don't know what I was doing, but I broke it. But yeah, so that should be a fun match too. I'm curious to see where that's going to go, because we have Azteca Lucha and Promociones Dorado both represented, and I guess they're technically kind of sort of merged right now, but tensions are totally there. So that brings us a handful of matches that are coming out of Fightland. Again, so we got the main event being Maz Kruger battling Satoshi Kojima for the MLW Heavyweight Championship. And then, of course, Kenta versus TJP, Mystico versus Bad Dude Tito. And then the finals are also going to be that night as well. So excitement on that. And then on the beIN Sports side of things, it is Bobby Fish taking on Kevin Knight, and the Andersons will be in action as well. Also, last but not least, if you haven't, MLW One Shot in New York City, their tickets are on sale now, so be sure to get those while you can. I assume the good seats will be selling out pretty darn soon. That will be December 5th at the Melrose Ballroom in New York City. So yeah, there we go. There's our news for the week. As I said, we're going to be sitting down with Marek Brave, talking SCW Pro, talking about Black and Brave, and the intertwining of those two organizations. So it's a great talk. I've been a big supporter of the SCW Pro portion of that for quite a while. I've made no secrets that MLW Con-Fusion is a sponsor and has been a sponsor for SCW Pro for a year and a half now. So big fan of the product, and by proxy a big fan of the work that's coming out of the Black and Brave Wrestling Academy. And if you're not familiar with the Black and the Brave, that is one of the preeminent wrestling training centers in the Midwest, led by Marek Brave and WWE superstar Seth Rollins. So we'll be sitting down with him. But first, let's just go ahead and get the ads out of the way so we can just have the interview in its entirety, and we'll be back un momento. If you're like me, sometimes you need a pick-me-up to get you through the day. I drink Ray's Energy for that pickup. Ray's comes in a bunch of different flavors, and more recently Italian Ice, which is great, by the way. And it contains no sugar, so there's no crash after you drink it. And really, like best of all, if you go through me and go to wetrepsports.com, use my code CASS, you get 15% off your order. So also, be like Cass, drink Ray's Energy. All right, everyone, we are back. MLW Con-Fusion special episode this week because I have the lead trainer of the Black and Brave Wrestling Academy and one of the big names behind the scenes of SCW Pro, Marek Brave. Marek, how are you doing today?
I am doing well, Rob. We're recording this on Labor Day, so I've had a nice day filled with hanging out with my kids and eating a lot of hot dogs. How about yourself?
We went out for deli food because the wife was craving a scone for whatever reason.
All right,
so
man. Well, you got to
so
keep the wife happy.
yep. And I'm not going to turn down a scone. It was a brownie scone, so it was weird and delicious. So no
Sounds pretty
complaints on
good.
that. But you know, on the business front, bringing you on the show because you got two big anniversaries. One like this general time of year, and then this coming weekend, September 7th. We'll start with the Black and the Brave Wrestling Academy celebrating 10 years in operation. Like how before we kind of get into the the hows and whys of it, like how big of a deal is it for you to have this school going for as long as it has?
It almost feels like it kind of snuck up on us, because we're always we're always doing work. We're always down there. The gym's open 7 days a week. We have open ring hours even when we're not in training. Right now, actually this upcoming week we're getting ready to start. No, this week. Oh my God, I would have been late to it. This week in a couple days, we're bringing in our new class to begin our 11th year of business. But even when we're not in session, I'm answering emails all the time and accepting students into classes that are years in advance, getting those booked up. And, we have a clothing line, a merch line, where we're selling t-shirts and hats and coffee mugs and all different things. So I feel like I'm doing work for Black and Brave every single day, which I'm not complaining. I'm blessed to do that. But uh, an anniversary like our 10th anniversary, a momentous occasion like this, it all just kind of crept up on me. And I was like, really? We've been doing this for a full decade? It doesn't feel that long. And then I take a look back and I'm like, yeah, man, we started this when both Seth and I were 28 years old, and now we're both 38 years old. And we've graduated 30 classes in our school. We run 3 classes a year. So yeah, that makes 10 years. So, pretty cool, pretty special. I don't think either of us thought that it was going to be as successful for whatever reason. I don't know. I guess when you're on the outside and you look in, you go, how could that not be successful? One of the most popular wrestlers on television over the past decade in Seth Rollins, multi-time WWE champion. But when we started it, we didn't think, oh, it'd be something that we were doing, well into our late 30s and hopefully into our 40s and 50s and beyond. But here we are, 10 years into the future, and it's been fun. It's been wild, and I think both of us, both Seth and I, feel that we've grown as performers and minds in the wrestling business because of the training and the teaching that we're doing down at the academy. So it's been a special experience for us. And hopefully all of our students who have come through the program as well can say the same.
And that's great. Let's break down realistically. I mean, small businesses, for better or for worse, don't always last terribly long to begin with. And then the wacky world of professional wrestling, the winds of change come in pretty quick. So that's, I mean, just in my eyes alone, that's why this NSCW Pros anniversary is such a big deal. But going back 10 years, you were kind of winding things down as in-ring competitor a wee bit at that point, but like what brought you and Seth together to say like, hey, we should open a wrestling school?
Well, I was actually doing a little bit of training on my own prior to Black and Brave opening. Seth was down in Florida, down at FIP, and then eventually it turned into NXT. And he was doing his thing down there, learning from Dusty Rhodes and Terry Taylor and all the greats down there. But he always checked in with me. We're friends first and foremost. But he always checked in on the wrestling training that I was doing. I was just training some guys here locally from the Quad Cities. We would set up a ring inside of a church gymnasium, and train, 2, 3 nights a week. And it was fun, but just even back then, I had been in the business for 10, 11 years at that point. Um, it had changed so much from the time that Seth and I started training to the time, I started training these guys 10 years ago. And it was a fun experience, but a strange experience in a way. And he would check in on me and see how things were going. And, I'd kind of vent some frustrations to him. And then one day he was like, well, what if you and I started a wrestling school together? And I was like, oh, yeah, that'd be fun. Just kind of thinking, like most things in wrestling, it would be talked about and then would never actually come to fruition. And so we talked about it for, a couple minutes and then kind of moved on. And then a few weeks later, I got a text message from him while I was at work. And he said, hey, um, I'm going to debut on the main roster and I'm going to move home shortly after that. And then we can start that wrestling school. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess we're actually going to do this. So we started making plans for that. I was actually finishing up an elementary education degree from St. Ambrose University here in Davenport. When we opened the school, I had a semester left, and I was like, I'll never forgive myself if I don't devote all of my time and attention to making this wrestling school successful. And then it isn't successful. I'll always look back and say, ah, man, if I would have just spent more time on this, it could have been something. So I actually went and spoke to a counselor at the school, and they froze my credits at St. Ambrose. I was in good academic standing. They froze my credits and said, go do your thing. If it doesn't work out, you can always come back, start where you left off, and finish off your degree. And so I left. We started the school, and thankfully, things went really well, and they have continued to go well for 10 years now. And we're booked for another 2 years in advance at this current time, and we'll continue to announce classes and get those filled up. And I guess we worked hard for it, but I almost feel lucky in a way. I almost feel like I got lucky, like I hit the lottery, being able to combine two passions of mine, teaching and pro wrestling, and make a living off this crazy pro wrestling world, which was always the goal when we first started. I just thought it would be for my in-ring work and not my training skills. But life has a funny way of working out in ways that you least expect them to. So.
I mean, that's a motto for life. What kind of struggles did you have early on, just setting up like the school itself, like in terms
Sure.
of finding, say, like a venue for it, or just, I mean, the pressures of wrestling school is not your typical small business.
Right.
So what was that like at the, say, like the business end of it?
Well, I guess you don't know what you don't know until you try it out. There's always going to be kinks that need to be worked out, and so you start with a plan that you feel is pretty good, and then as you move along, you realize, okay, well, if we tweak this a little bit here, I think it'll run a little bit smoother, and then if we tweak this a little bit there, it'll run a little bit smoother, and oh, we should probably get some social media going for this. At first we made the announcement because WWE.com did a story on us opening the school, and we just had an email, and people would email in, and we'd fill up the class rosters that way. And then it was like, well, if we started a Twitter for this or an Instagram for this, that could probably blow up, considering Seth has multiple millions of social media followers. That turned out to be a smart thing. So we did that, and then we got hooked up with a clothing company to help us with our merchandise and things like that. So a lot of dominoes kind of fell into place as we went along. But I wouldn't say there were large bumps in the road when we first started. We just had to tweak things on, how people paid and when they paid. And, at first we were like, oh, well, you just pay as you go. And then we didn't realize that a lot of people would drop out pretty early on because wrestling's very difficult. And you think you want to do it based on what you see on television. And then the first time you take a bump and you realize just how much it hurts, compared to how much you thought it was going to hurt or wasn't going to hurt. And then you go, oh, okay, I'm going to go back home and go do what I was doing back then before I was falling down and getting hurt. So for somebody who dropped out of school to make this his living, having people drop out before they make full payments, that wasn't necessarily the best business model. So we changed that pretty early on so that I could make this my career, thankfully. But yeah, you just kind of you throw stuff against the wall and you see what sticks. That's kind of one of our biggest mottos at Black and Brave. Throw, and that goes for us as business owners, but also our trainees. You know, hey, they ask us all the time, well, what should my character be? What should I do for a move set? And we're like, hey, you're not going to know until you go out there and try it. You don't know what you don't know. So throw it against the wall, see what sticks. The stuff that falls away, get rid of it, and just move forward. Always be ready to be adaptable and to make changes as needed. So we did the same thing, and thankfully we got a group of intelligent people working on this, and we've been able to figure out problems as they've arisen, and here we are now.
Speaking of changing and going with the flow, I want to ask about how, without pulling back the curtain, like how has things changed, like on a training front or your training philosophy, like going from back when you broke into the business to, we'll say, like day one, class one, and now 10 years into training, like what
Yeah,
was the
that's a great
changes?
question. That's a great question. The wrestling business as a whole, I've been involved with wrestling for 21 years now. The wrestling business as a whole has made widespread changes. Some of them for the better, some of them not for the better, in my opinion. But when Seth and I were getting trained, and we'll just call him Colby because that's what I called him back when we were getting trained. Seth Rollins did not exist in 2004, but 2003 when we first started. But things were different. It was like the Wild West back then. It was very not PC in a lot of ways. You know, the locker room humor and the locker room talk that was rampant. And wrestlers are, especially back then, were a certain type of individual. So much so that I don't think Colby and I fit in with a lot of the old school wrestling crowd because we were young. We were 18 years old. We were just forming a new generation of pro wrestler that was about to come into the business, and so it was a little bit of a culture shock going into these small town locker rooms and seeing these old heads speak the way they spoke and say the things they said and act the way they acted. And, you always kind of had to have eyes in the back of your head because you didn't know if somebody was offended by something you did or said and you had no idea. And then they were going to, take liberties with you in the ring, whatever it may be. So, we navigated that quite well until after, a few months of being on these bigger shows, traveling the country, people realize, oh, these guys are actually pretty good and they're cool kids and they're respectful. Sometimes I think we came across as disrespectful just because we were pretty confident in our abilities. And there's a fine line between confidence and cockiness. And so some people thought we were a little cocky, but, we'll wear that like a badge of honor if we must. But, so it was definitely different. 21 years ago, it might as well have been 1965 in these wrestling locker rooms, And then you fast forward 11 years until we start our wrestling school, and I'm in my late 20s, and I'm trying to emulate my trainer, Danny Daniels, who owns AAW in Chicago, and he was, kind of that tough love type of trainer, that old school, almost football coach mentality where he's going to yell at you and scream at you and tell you all the things you did wrong before patting you on the back one time and saying, hey, but you did all right. It was 99% screaming and then 1%, like I said, a hug and a pat on the back. So I'm trying to do all that and trying to be this person. And I was younger, so I had a little bit more energy, a little bit more piss and vinegar, so to speak. And then as you go on through the years, you realize that the type of person getting into the wrestling business is changing a little bit. The type of human being that just exists in the world as a young person, in 2016, 2018, 2020, those people are a little bit different than even I was when I was 17, 18 years old, and certainly different than, people who are now 45, 50 years old, certainly different than they were when they were 17, 18 years old. So you got to kind of modify your coaching style a little bit. And you ask some of the older graduates that were around 10 years ago, and they'll say, oh, Merrick's gone soft. He doesn't yell as much anymore. He's nicer to these guys. Where was that when I was training, and it's just the natural evolution of who you are as a human being, but also a natural evolution of what today's generation of young learner needs. And that was one of the things I learned when I was going to college to be a teacher, is you have to adapt your style based on the students that you're teaching. And so when I saw the new kind of young learner, like I said, come through, I realized that I can't just be screaming at these guys all the time. That's not going to get the results that we're trying to get. That's just going to cause them to shut down mentally and physically, and that's a bad combination for something as dangerous as wrestling is. So we changed our approach. I changed my approach. And it seems to be working for the better. If anything shifts beyond that, then we'll continue to change the approach as needed. But I think that's one of the things that we do well, is we adapt to each individual learner that comes through the program within reason. There's still things that you got to be tough on, because it is pro wrestling after all. Like they always say, it ain't ballet. So I think we've been able to adapt and change over time, and that's been a good thing for our school and just the wrestling product in general.
No, exactly. Like everything changes, and even like the way you were describing it, it makes me kind of go back to the old adage of, well, you're getting your education in education. They talk about how going into the educational system as a teacher, like you got to start off being kind of the hard ass,
Yep.
because otherwise everyone's going to walk all over you, and then once you build up your rep, then you can chillax a little bit and be the cool guy, because you've already got the respect. So it's I think that's an old analogy that was working here. You tried to mention the people that you have around you to make the business work as well. Kind of get back to the students here in a bit, but one of the things I do whenever I have the SCW Pro guys on the show is, yes, everyone knows the Black and Brave as the Seth Rollins school, but obviously it's a team effort. Obviously, you were the lead guy behind the scenes, but you also have Matt Mayday, Crotch, in there as well. And I try to get people's experience, working specifically with you guys, since you guys are doing most of the day-to-day training. How did Matt or Crotch come into the fold as a trainer?
Yeah, so I've known Matt, I've known Crotch for 20 years now, actually pretty close to 21 years. He showed up. He actually, a lot of people don't know this. He was actually a paying fan at the very first ever SCW show back in August of 2003. I think it was $3 to get in that night, something ridiculously low, right? But still probably overpriced for the type of product we were putting out there. We were just a bunch of high school kids goofing off, not really knowing exactly what we were supposed to be doing. We had some formal training from one of our guys, or a couple of our guys had gone to Chicago and gone through wrestling school, and then they came back and they spent like 2 days teaching us how to bump and run the ropes and do simple things like body slams and suplexes, and they were like, all right, you guys are ready to wrestle. So naturally, we had to put on a show in front of paying customers back then. But Crotch was a paying customer for that first show, and then afterwards he approached one of the guys who was running SCW back then and said, how do I get involved? And it was like, oh, well, come to this house on this day. We'll have the ring set up in the backyard because we're going to have a practice. And if you pay like $25, then we'll give you like a 1-day training camp for wrestling. And him and his brother showed up, and a couple of their friends came along with them. And I don't want to say they were great in the ring that day. They weren't the most athletic individuals we had ever met at that point, but they were fun to be around. And Crotch was always a smart guy, so you could have intelligent conversations with him. And we were interested in the same bands and the same movies, and we had the same humor. And so it was like, hey, we like these guys. They should stick around. And he eventually got trained by the same guy who trained Colby, Seth, and myself. We were in the first class. He got trained by him in his second class. I think he only ever did 3 classes, but so we just, he stuck around, and he wrestled for SCW, and then he traveled with us to other shows, and eventually got booked on those shows. And so I've known him for 2 decades, and he's one of my closest friends at this point. He did not start out as the original assistant trainer at the Black and Brave Wrestling Academy. Shane Hollister was actually the original assistant trainer at the Black and Brave Academy, but he had some scheduling issues and wasn't quite able to commit to the training schedule as much as we needed him to. So we had to part ways with him after the first class, and Colby was like, "Hey, well, who should be our new assistant trainer?" And immediately I said, "It should be Matt. It should be Crotch, because A, he's a cool dude. B, he's very respectful and takes these things seriously. He'll be here. He'll make time for this. And C, he's a damn good pro wrestler. So, we can get him in the fold, and it'll benefit us, but it'll benefit the students as well." And so I reached out to him, and he immediately said, "Yeah, I'd love to do that." And he has been here ever since. So, not since the first class, but I would say a few weeks into the second class, he became our assistant trainer, and he's been with us ever since.
And one of the things that does pop up again when I interview the SCW Pro guys is they talk about how like how well like you two have gelled like as coaches, and how if somehow one of the students stumps you, Crotch could be like, "Oh, hey, try this instead," and vice versa. So
Yeah,
I mean, it's working.
we each have a set of eyes on everything that's going on, and I may miss something or not notice something that he notices, or vice versa. He'll be working with somebody, and I'll take a look over there, and I'm like, "Oh, well, try it this way. This may work." And so we do work well together. Like I said, we're very close friends, even outside of wrestling. So it's cool to be able to go to a gym and work with some of my best friends, but also, you know, be able to excel at what we do at the same time, and to make a great team. So I'm lucky to have the guys that I have down there, and Matt's definitely a big part of that.
As a fan of the SCW Pro product, like this, the SCW Pro is kind of a training ground, or at least in terms of a live audience, for a lot of the guys that come through Black and the Brave. It, you know, how do you feel as a coach, like seeing like the hard work in the form of your students like come into play in front of a live audience, especially like as some of the guys who have hung around for the area for a handful of years, or even say some of the other ones who've actually kind of gone on to get some notoriety around the country and even around the world.
Yeah, I think it's a great opportunity for those guys to be able to graduate, our program, and have an immediate booking really close to home base here, their new home. A lot of them relocate here to the Quad Cities, but really close to their home base, really close to their gym, and to be able to perform in front of their coaches live and get that instant feedback. They don't have to send us the match over email, or back in the day, you'd mail a DVD or something if you wanted somebody to watch what you were doing. Or even when I first started, we still were using VHS tapes a lot of times. But to get that instant feedback from your coaches, I think that's an invaluable thing. And we encourage these guys to get out and wrestle anywhere and everywhere. Get on the road, travel, make the towns, and get that experience. Don't just stick around here. Don't just only wrestle for SCW. And once you feel like you've reached the point where you'd like to move on and relocate somewhere else, and have a go at some of these even bigger promotions, that's fully encouraged by us as well. But to be able to take someone who's never stepped in a wrestling ring a day in their life, teach them everything that they know about professional wrestling in a 12-week time frame, get them having matches by the end of that 12-week training period, and then turn around and a month later put them in a ring in front of 150, 250 paying audience members, and see them get a reaction, using the techniques that were taught to them, and then using their own charisma, to get those reactions as well. It is a gratifying thing as a coach to be able to watch someone live their dream, uh, right in front of your eyes. And that's something that really does, even to this day, 10 years into running Black and Brave, and 21 years into being in this business. That's something that still kind of warms my heart a little bit, and gives me the warm and fuzzies when I'm watching these guys and girls do this. So I think it's pretty cool that, and nobody's getting rich off independent wrestling, right? That's not a thing that happens. It's never happened. It ain't happening nowadays. So to be able to do that to me is the most gratifying part of running an independent promotion like SCW, and running a training school like Black and Brave.
And to kind of like piggyback off of this, like you've gotten to share the ring with a bunches of your students like in front of the audience at SCW Pro. Like, what is that like being able to share the ring with someone you've trained?
Terrifying. No, I have to trust that I taught them well, and I have to trust that they learned those lessons well. I always tell them, and I'm only half joking, but I'm like, hey, don't hurt me out there, all right? I'm an old man at this point. I'm beat up everywhere. I've had spinal fusion surgery, and my knees are shot, and my shoulders are shot, and just take care of me out there, all right? And then we lock up, and they're all going soft with me, and I'm like, hey, lay it in, I'm still a pro wrestler out here. Come on now. But no, it's great being able to step in the ring with them, and you know, especially when I can tell that they appreciate the opportunity to do so, and they treat it almost like an honor. That's an honor for me, to have somebody feel that way about being able to tussle with me in there. So I always enjoy doing that, especially the first time it happens. I think the most recent example being at this year's Prestige Rumble, when I got to go and have the first little bit with Cornboy, somebody who has been with us for quite a while and has done really great work for SCW and various other promotions around the Midwest. And quite frankly, somebody who was not very good when he was finishing up his training with Black and Brave. It wasn't going well. Things weren't clicking for him. And then one day he came in and he said, "Hey, I want to do this gimmick called Elote the Corn Boy." And I said, "I don't know what that means." And he's like, "It's like those guys on the side of the road that sell corn." And I'm like, "I still don't really know what that means, but we're getting a little bit closer now." And I was like, "You know what? Just go in there." It was out of practice. I was like, "Just go in there, have a match with somebody, show me the character. Don't tell me about the character. Show it to me." And he went in there and he acted the way he acts now. He was a complete psychopath. And I said, "I don't know what this is, but that was amazing. And if you can continue to do this in front of a live audience, you have something here. So let's take that, let's put it on a show, and let's see what happens." And what happened was magical. He instantly had a connection with the audience. The wrestling was still a work in progress, right? The finer points, the technical points of the wrestling, but he was able to establish a connection using his character with the audience, and it was magical to watch. And then as he got the reps and he continued to wrestle for SCW and various other places, he got better as a wrestler, and his in-ring work got better. And now I look at him and I'm like, man, you are a damn good pro wrestler, Kevin. So that was the most recent example of me being able to step into the ring for the first time with one of my students, and it was really fun. It was fun for me. I'm a fan of Cornboy, just outside of being his trainer and his promoter. I just like him. I think he's a fun wrestler to watch and a fun wrestler to root for, and a great guy as well.
Oh, this is a Cornboy household, so we are sold on it. But
Great.
as someone who's watched the product for years and years and years, and the terms of speaking specifically about Cornboy, it's great being able to watch him go from like barely being on a show, and when he is on the show, like he got to come out and do his little corn shtick, and then got annihilated anywhere from 1 to 5 minutes. Go from that to like where he is now, like within like SCW Pro and elsewhere. Realistically speaking, like we got a couple months left, but like he may have had a match of the year with the one called Manders. Like,
Absolutely.
You go from a guy like struggling to get squashed to match of the year candidate. Like that shows that shows the work, but two, like it just like it as a fan, that warms my heart as someone who's invested in as a fan with these wrestlers that I've enjoyed watching over the years.
And that's a testament to the work that Kevin's put in. He works so hard at this, and he cares. He wants to be good. There's a lot of people in pro wrestling who will tell you that they want to be good, and they'll tell you they care, and they'll tell you that they want to work hard, but actions speak louder than words, and they don't always put in the work to achieve those things. But Kevin is the opposite of that. Kevin will tell you what he wants to do, and then he will work towards that. So yeah, you're right. Somebody who was mostly character at first, almost all character, exclusively just character, to now somebody who's just a very, very good professional wrestler. And I agree with you that he's had a couple matches with Manders this year for SCW, but in particular, that first one, was that back in January? That might have been in January. I can't even remember. Or maybe it was April at
Well, you say,
Epic.
I want to say he had. Yeah, see now my brain. I want to say like one was around December, and then the other was February, maybe.
I'm
Or
not
maybe it was Epic.
100% sure, but I know he's wrestled Manders twice for us this year, both for the Iowa Championship and in particular, both matches were great, but in particular that first one, they came to the back, and I said that was one of the best matches I've seen in the history of SCW Pro, and we're 21 years in at this point, and I mean that with all sincerity. It was just a tremendous professional wrestling match. I sent it to Seth, to Colby, and he agreed. He thought it was tremendous, and that's, again, just to go back to Seth's involvement in all of this. He doesn't run anything for SCW. He has no involvement in booking or acquiring talent or anything like that. There's no day-to-day operations that he does, but he still cares and he still keeps tabs on what everyone's doing. And I'll still text him about good matches that happen. And then let me watch it. Send me the video. I'll watch it when I'm on the plane. And then he'll send his feedback to the guys, and he stays involved as well. So, but yeah. Cornboy and Manders. I know you got your little social media beef with Manders there. He's another example of somebody who just when he first started was like, you got to figure some things out, man. This you're not a natural at this. And then to see where he's at now, and just recently, finishing up some matches in Japan, which was always like his number one goal in pro wrestling, was to get over to Japan. I'm so proud of Steve as an individual and as a performer. Just to see him. Just be a shining example of what a Black and Brave graduate can do if they work hard. And I'm not sure there's anyone who's come out of our school in the past 10 years who's worked harder than Steve Manders. And I mean that with all sincerity. He is the hardest working person I've seen come from our academy, and it's paying off for him, and he's doing great with the opportunities that he's earned. And I still think he's only scratching the surface. I think he has a bright future ahead, even though he's been doing so many awesome things as of late.
And you blew one of my evil plans all the way. Cause one of my next questions would be like, has Manders always been a disappointment? And now here you are. And then I was going to wait for you to be like, no, he's actually a really good dude. And then I'm going to like accuse you of bias. And I was going to pop up Cowboy Marek Brave and then with the one called Manders and me crying.
I am not a cowboy hat wearer in real life. I had just gotten back from Mexico, and when I was down there, a lot of locals wearing cowboy hats, and I was like, man, these guys look really cool. You're on vacation, and you think the weirdest stuff is the coolest stuff. You're like, oh yeah, maybe I will get a cowboy hat. That'd be kind of cool. And I text Steve, and I'm like, what do you think? Would I look good in a cowboy hat? And then I went to the local boot barn, which I always feel like is the most appropriate name for a cowboy store, the Boot Barn. But I went to the Boot Barn for the first time in my life, and I put a hat on, and I took a picture, and I sent it to Steve, and I'm like, what do you think? Do I look good as a cowboy? And he started laughing. And then we had him booked like a month later, and I was like, you know what? Screw it. I'm buying this cowboy hat, and I'm gonna pull a rib on Steve, and I'm gonna come to the show dressed like a cowboy, because I know he's gonna come dressed as a cowboy. He lives the gimmick. Yeah. And he showed up, and I was already there, and I walked up to him. I said, howdy, partner, and shook his hand, and he was laughing, and it was all a big rib. But, I thought I looked pretty dashing in that cowboy hat and those cowboy boots.
Well, I mean, you are the original fashionista.
That's true.
Seth stole your thing right there.
100%.
I've pointed that outline occasionally. Like,
thank you.
Here you go. Like, hey, who did it first?
Well, I definitely did it first, and he watched me do it live. He came to one of the shows at the Cole Ballroom and watched me wrestle as the fashionista, and he was impressed by the gimmick. So I will take credit for his drip god persona or whatever. I don't even know what he's calling it anymore, but
I call it fashionista because I know where it came
is.
From. The only difference is the budget.
Yes, absolutely.
but no, the cowboy thing like is like I come through the line and like just got through the door, just because I always go on there whenever Manders comes home, and I'm like, this my money's not supposed to be going to Cowboys. There's supposed to be zero Cowboys, and I walk in, and there you
Multiple
are.
Cowboys.
Yeah, now there's two Cowboys.
Yeah.
But oh, deep breath. But no, like no. And even with our beef, I have to, I have to admit he's putting in the work, and I can't slander too much a guy who's gotten to travel the world. I mean, just this year alone, because he's popped in over at Europe and Germany, and yeah, he's just getting back from Japan as well. And
And I'll tell you, these opportunities, he is so appreciative of them. It's not lost on him. He doesn't take anything for granted. He takes a step back every day to smell the roses, and he'll message me when he's in Germany or when he's in Japan, and he'll send me a message and just say, "Hey, thanks for everything, coach. I wouldn't be where I'm at if it wasn't for you, if it wasn't for Black and Brave, if it wasn't for SCW." And he is very, very thankful, grateful, and appreciative of everything, everyone who's helped him along the way. And we're thankful and appreciative of the banner he carries for Black and Brave and for SCW all around the world now.
yeah, and you guys even got a shout out on his was it in the life of, I believe it is, for IWTV. So
Yeah.
like he showed up for last year's May event. I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head, but he got the camera involved and got some footage of his match in SCW Pro and him kind of walking around talking to everyone, plus all the stuff he did coming back to the Quad Cities as well for IWTV. So that was a neat documentary. So I will put that over anybody who's has an IWTV subscription. Check out In the Life of, just in general, because it's a neat view of the guys and gals in independent wrestling. But kind of like we've been working that way anyway. SCW Pro is celebrating 21 years this week. Like, we'll again Taylor back with Black and Brave and stuff, but like how big of a deal is that just to reach that 21 year mark? How it now it can drink? Like
it's massive. It's almost unbelievable. I think if you would have told any of us on that first show that the company would still exist 21 years on, and not just exist, but like literally be more popular than it ever had been in its entire history, we all would have told you that that's not a chance. No way that that's going to happen. But here we are 21 years later, and we have a wonderful, supportive fan base, which includes yourself, and you're an absolute fantastic sponsor of the events as well, and we do appreciate that. But to reach that milestone is almost unheard of in independent wrestling. I've been around long enough to know that when a new promotion pops up, it's only a matter of time before that new promotion folds, because they understand, oh, okay, this is a lot more difficult than I thought it was going to be, and a lot more expensive, and there's a lot of things that you can do right and a lot of things you can do wrong when you start a promotion. And we as SCW, when we learned the hard way in a lot of ways when we were younger, but we always had a drive to just put on another show. When we were younger and we were putting on monthly shows, it was like, well, if we can just do well enough to run another show next month, then we did our job. We achieved our goal. It was never a thing of, oh, well, we hope we can make $10,000 off the show and everyone can get paid well, and we can all go home and pay our rent or our mortgage, and yet it was never that. It was never about money or anything like that, which I do think that's still the business model today. We charge $10 a ticket, flat rate for anybody. It's not $25 for front row and $15 for second row. Hey, it's $10. Pay your $10, sit wherever you sit, and just have fun. Because for me, it's about the live experience. It's about bringing people together to enjoy professional wrestling. And that's what we do. And, people make lifelong friendships by coming to our shows and sitting next to the same people every month, and now multiple times a month. And people meet their significant others. People meet their future wives and husbands at our shows. And then those people have babies, and then those babies start coming to the shows and they start growing up. It's wild. It's wild. And to me, that's the awesome part of doing this. It's one of the awesome parts of doing this. And as long as we can continue to do that, and we can be a place for people to come and enjoy entertainment, not just even wrestling, but just entertainment. Get away from their lives, get away from, the job that's not treating you well, or the family members that are pissing you off for one reason or another, and you can just come and forget about that for a couple hours, a handful of times every month, and just have a good time. That's what I want to be. And to know that we've been able to do that for 21 years, it's absolutely crazy. Sometimes I lay my head down at night, and as I'm drifting to sleep, your brain gets all loopy and whatnot, and I'm like, man, is this not to be cliche, but is this all just like some crazy dream? And I'm going to wake up and I'm back in year 2 of my professional wrestling journey, and I just had some weird time warp where I fast forwarded into some future that may not even exist, but it is real life, and it's a pretty damn good life too. It's a pretty fun life, and I'm blessed to be able to live it.
I agree. As I said once before, the winds of wrestling or blow very hard, and things come and go very quickly just in general. Like just in my time wandering central Illinois and eastern Iowa, like I've seen companies come into existence and just poof, just nothing the next time.
Yeah.
Or companies do really well, and then somehow next month 10 people. But
Yep.
yeah,
It takes a lot of effort. It really does take a lot of effort. Um, every day. There isn't a day that goes by that I don't think about or do something for SCW, whether it's social media related or getting, a card booked, or planning storylines for the future, or, communicating with venues about future dates, or there's just so much. There's so much work that goes on behind the scenes in independent wrestling that I don't think a lot of fans understand actually happens, um, and but it has to happen. It has to be done, because if those things aren't done, then like you said, that's when you go from, hey, we ran our first show and people were excited and they came out and there was 150 people there, but the show went 5 hours and every match went 25 minutes, and people were cursing like crazy and saying mother F this and mother F that. And then we show up 3 weeks later and we're expecting to build on our 150 person draw, and like you said, there's 10 people there because we rubbed everybody the wrong way, and we everything that we could have done right, we actually did it wrong. I've been booked on those shows, and I had the benefit of learning from other people's mistakes and learning from our own mistakes as well. SCW used to be run by high school kids, so it was presented as a promotion that was run by high school kids. So every match somebody was bleeding, and there was chair shots and trash cans and mother F this and mother F that. And all of a sudden we're like, man, we only drew 25 people at this show. What happened? And then eventually along the line, you grow up a little bit and you realize, okay, I gotta put on a product that the audience enjoys, not a product that me, an 18-year-old, enjoys. And now as a 38-year-old with 2 kids, it's a lot easier for me to look at the product and go, all right, as a dad with 2 kids, what would get me to go to a show? And if I view it from that lens, then it helps a little bit.
No, I'm as much as I admit I'm an unabashed deathmatch guy too, but I admit
Sure.
there's a time and a place for it, and like it's just probably more important to have something that appeals to everyone. Wrestling is a circus. If someone doesn't like the trapeze, then someone can watch the bear on the tricycle, or the lion tamer, or the clowns, or whatever.
Absolutely.
And being able to do it all together is very important. And I will put over SCW as being a very family friendly product. This is one of the things I miss about the Walcott Coliseum is the gaggle of children that would flock to crotch. Like we just don't we don't have that at the Bluegrass Coliseum. I don't know if those kids just grew up and they haven't been replaced, or if it's just something in the water between Bluegrass and Walcott, but I
He's
missed
not
that.
over anymore.
Yeah, no one loves Crotch anymore. But
You'll have to clip that part and make
yeah,
sure that goes all over social media. Marek Brave says Crotch
no.
isn't over anymore.
But I used to love that. It'd be like 10 kids, like pelvic thrust. And that's not inherently family friendly, but that's as I say family friendly, but they got a bunch of kids over there doing the cross pelvic crotch pelvic thrust, and
Yeah,
I always
what a
thought that
bad
was
influence.
yeah. Well, someone's got to teach him that lesson. It might as well be Crotch, who's now a trainer teaching those lessons to the next
Yep.
generations of wrestlers. But that's something like I low key like miss was just like there'd be like 10 kids just running up with Crotch at the ring steps, and they'd do their thing, and then they'd all just run back to their seats and you know wait to see what happens next with them. But like but there's nothing. Yeah, like SCW is a place where like okay, I have brought like my entire family. I shouldn't say entire family, but I've brung chunks of my family over the course of like the last decade. Whether it had been to Beer Stew, which I miss those shows too, but that one's out of everybody's control. To now, dragging my wife along to bluegrass and occasionally Wildwood as well. So it again, like I've been watching it for a good decade, and it just shows the kind of product you guys have put out in one way, shape, or form to bring that consistency and just to have some darn good wrestling in the area. Because otherwise, Lord knows, we got to travel to Chicago or Des Moines or Ottumwa to find something else, which is weird in a population of like nearly 500,000 people. But before I start ranting again, this is a question I've been curious about, but I've not had anyone who runs a promotion on to say it. Like, how difficult is it to find a venue that will handle professional wrestling? Because there's always that stigma about wrestling and its wrestling fans. Like, how hard is that at times when you've had to switch up, like say losing the Walcott Coliseum and or other venues?
Yeah, when we were younger, when we were first starting out and wrestling wasn't as popular as it is now, it was a little bit more difficult to find venues, and we didn't have the reputation that we do now as a family friendly organization that has been around for 2 decades plus. So nowadays it's not as difficult. Thankfully, I don't need any more stress in my life as it pertains to pro wrestling. But yeah, I think it just is a testament to our consistency, right? I think if you treat professional wrestling professionally and you conduct business as a professional, I think that goes a long way uh, in terms of your reputation within the community. And people talk, people have friends, business owners have other friends who are business owners, and they say, "Oh, you got to check out this wrestling. It's a fun time. They get good crowds. Those crowds then spend money on food and alcohol and whatever it may be, and so we can make money while they make money, and it's a synergistic relationship." So I think the longer you do it and the more consistent you are and you have a track record of making good decisions and good choices, I think your reputation just continues to grow and becomes something that people are attracted to and they want to be a part of. So there was a time when we would struggle to find a venue just to house our normal, what we call our storyline shows. And now we get so many people requesting for us to be a part of their events and their festivals, and we're doing the downtown Iowa City Block Party every year, and we're doing the Alternating Currents Festival in the Quad Cities every year, and we have a show coming up at the end of this month. And I think I'm breaking news right now, we haven't announced this on social media yet, but we're doing a Lucha Libre themed event at Viva Muscatine for a Hispanic festival that they're doing on Saturday, September 28th. We'll be performing from 4 to 6 o'clock out in the streets of Muscatine, actually at the corner of Cedar and Second, I believe. And we get asked to do those things because these people have talked to other people who have said, "Hey, SCW, you got to work with those guys. They're very professional. They're easy to work with. They're flexible. They're adaptable, whatever it may be." So I think once your reputation grows by staying consistent, then it's not as difficult as maybe it was when we were a little bit younger. So the Bluegrass Coliseum, they were welcoming us with open arms when our relationship with the Walcott Coliseum ended, and there was not to get too deep into it, there was no bad blood between us and the Coliseum. We had heard wind that they were selling again. We had been with them for 10 years. They had been sold, I think, 3 times in the amount of time that we were with them, and we had gotten wind that the people who were purchasing the Coliseum were going to turn it into like a storage facility. It wasn't going to be a live event venue anymore, and so just kind of out of necessity to make sure that there wasn't going to be any interruption for our monthly shows, we decided to move the operation to the Bluegrass Community Center for our monthly shows, because the community center had been reaching out to us for, gosh, probably about a year at that point, asking us over and over again if we would be interested in running events in the community center. But at that time, the community center was so close to the Coliseum that there's not much of a difference between, the audience that we would bring in. We would almost kind of be our own competition if we were to do that. So I kept telling them no. And then when I saw this opportunity arise to make the move, we communicated with the Coliseum and their owners, and they understood, and we made the move. And then I think actually it never ended up selling the Coliseum. It's still under the same ownership. So it's weird how those things work out the way they do, but we're really happy at the community center. Those guys treat us they treat us with such respect, and they're so good to us. And I would say in our 21-year history, that's been my favorite venue to run shows at, and they've been the easiest ones to work with.
We've talked about, Walcott, Bluegrass. Like, these are all very brief driving distances from the Quad Cities, especially. I guess some closer than the other, depending on where you live at. Like, but how awesome is it to be able to be like, you are a QC home, QC grown, QC, small business? Because like, not this is not a secret. Black and the Brave is downtown Davenport. It is like 3 blocks from the river, and the kind of like one of the hot spots of the community.
Yeah, we're proud to represent the Quad Cities. I'm not actually originally from the Quad Cities. I was born in Manchester, New Hampshire. Shout out to Joey Eastman, Sidney Bacabello. I believe he is living there now, and if not, he did live there for a time. But I moved all around as a little kid, eventually settled in the Quad Cities in 1997. I've lived here ever since. And so, after 27 years, I feel like I can call myself an official Iowan and an official Quad Citian. But we're proud, both within SCW and Black and Brave, to represent the Quad Cities. Every time Seth Rollins comes out on TV, it says from Davenport, Iowa, and he's very proud to carry that banner all around the world. And to have the community embrace us the way they have, like I said, with us, running shows in various venues across the Quad Cities and the surrounding cities, the suburbs of the Quad Cities, to have those communities embrace us the way they have, it's been pretty special for us. And any way we can give back to local organizations here, we love to be able to do those things.
I can't say anything, because even if you've traveled all around, like, you've got me beat as a Quad Cityan, because I think I'm at about will be like 6 years here next month. So I am from out in the middle of nowhere as well, and have not hidden that fact at all.
Well, we're happy to have you.
But the things we do for love, professional wrestling, and my wife, maybe come up this way. Again, taking it into the now. So 21 years, the 21st anniversary is, at the time of this recording, this Saturday, September 7th, 6 p.m., Bluegrass Community Center. Is there any surprises you got lined up that you can hint at, or is Mom going to be the word?
Well, I'm certainly not going to give away any spoilers on this podcast. As much as we do love your podcast, Rob, and do appreciate the sponsorship that you have graciously presented to us over the last, gosh, how long are we at now? Like
about 18 months, I think.
Wow, that's awesome. We do very much appreciate that, but I can't give away spoilers for the big event that we got going on Saturday. Let's just say there might be some shocking turn of events if you do happen to lay down your $10 bill and come watch us at the Bluegrass Community Center this Saturday.
I mean, I would expect nothing less and I don't I try not to push too hard at that curtain. But either way, I mean, I've made no secret. Myself, the wife will be there, and obviously we're getting you on to hopefully get a couple more people excited for the event, because again, SCW Pro can drink now. They are 21. Shots of Malort all around. But we'll end it on that. I want to thank you for taking the time to come on and just talk about the last, well, by proxy 20 years, but at least the last 10, and we're looking forward to the next 10 plus years.
Thank you so much for having me on, Rob. I wish you continued success with this podcast, and again, appreciate your support of SCW and Black and Brave and independent wrestling as a whole.
MLW Con-Fusion is a weekly podcast that is written and performed by Rob Kammer and hosted by Spotify for podcasters. MLW Con-Fusion is part of the Urban Wrestling Network, and you can check them out and check out the Major League Pod on YouTube at Urban Wrestling NW. The background music for this section is Ruined by Day, performed by Alan Schroeder. If you enjoyed this podcast and would like to support, please like, subscribe, and tell your friends, family, and enemies. Leaving a review is also helpful. Word of mouth of advertisement is very important for small podcasts such as this. Social media links can be found in the description, but Twitter and Instagram are at the Nova of Cass, TheNovaofCass, and Facebook is at MLW Con-Fusion, all one word. If you'd like to support monetarily and help upgrade my equipment, please check out my virtual chip jar at ko-fi.com/Casanova. Or if you prefer more bang for your buck, you can go to patreon.com/Casanova, CASSONOVA, where for as little as $2, backers get access to the podcast early and without those pesky ads, plus other exclusive content. So join the crew that is headed up by Keith Wynn, Alan Schroeder, Alex McCarthy, and Elenia, and check it out. You can also find t-shirts, coffee mugs, and other merch at the Con-Fusion podcast on Teespring. Also, be sure to check out the description to find some affiliate links for, well, WWE merch, coffee machines, ice makers, and much more. For business inquiries such as ads and sponsorships, please email rzkammer, that's Kamerer, at comcast.net. Thank you for listening.